The iceberg was just an excuse, the horrifying truth about the Titanic.
We all know the story. It's a legend, right? The unsinkable ship, a true marvel of technology on its very first voyage, tragically lost forever in the icy North Atlantic. But what if that story, the one we've all been told, isn't the whole truth? What if the ship we've mourned for over a century wasn't actually the Titanic? Okay, let's get right into it. We're about to explore one of the most compelling and, honestly, one of the most elaborate conspiracy theories in all of history. It's a wild story of corporate greed, a secret switch, and a cover-up that might just be sitting at the bottom of the ocean. So get ready to question everything you think you know about the Titanic. So to really get this theory, we can't start with the Titanic. Nope. We have to rewind a little and talk about its older sister ship, the RMS Olympic. They were almost identical, and this is where the whole twisted plot really begins, with a financial disaster that might have set the stage for an even bigger one at sea. It all comes down to a really bad day for the White Star Line. You see, in September 1911, the Olympic gets into this serious collision with a warship, the HMS Hawk. The damage was bad, really bad. But to make things 1,000 times worse, an official inquiry put the blame squarely on the Olympic. And that was the nail on the coffin. It meant the insurance company flat out refused to pay for the repairs. So now, the company is stuck with this crippled, uninsured flagship that is just hemorrhaging money. And this is the giant financial headache at the heart of the whole theory, first laid out by researcher Robin Gardner. Think about it. On one hand, you've got the Olympic, this broken, expensive mess. And on the other, you have the Titanic, brand new, perfect, and fully insured for a fortune. So, if you're the company and you're facing total financial ruin, what do? Well, the theory says they came up with a plan that was, let's just say, unbelievably audacious. And here it is, the core of the entire conspiracy, the switch. The plan, supposedly, was to secretly swap the identities of the two ships. They'd patch up the damaged Olympic just enough, slap the name Titanic on it, and then send it out to be intentionally sunk. Why? To collect that massive insurance payout on a brand new ship. The real Titanic, meanwhile, would just quietly take the Olympic's place and sail for years. I mean, it's a pretty sinister, but you gotta admit, a pretty perfect solution to their money problem. The real question is, could they have actually gotten away with it? Okay, so a plan this massive, this bold, would have to leave some clues behind, right? You can't just switch two of the biggest ships in the world and have no one notice. Well, believers in this theory say, oh, it did leave a trail. They point to a whole bunch of physical clues, weird last-minute changes, and strange behavior that, when you line it all up, suggests something was seriously off long before that ship ever left the dock. So the evidence starts to build. First off, the ships were practically twins, which makes a swap at least possible. But then you get these little oddities. Like, why would you cover brand new linoleum floors with carpet right before the maiden voyage? Unless maybe you were trying to hide some scuffs and wear from the Olympic's previous trips? And what about the sea trials? Why rush a brand new ship through its tests in a single day, skipping high-speed runs? Maybe because you know the patched-up hull couldn't take the stress? And then there's the big one. J.P. Morgan himself, the guy who owned the company, cancels his ticket at the very last minute. And he wasn't the only one. Just a coincidence? Or did they know something we didn't? Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Theorists believe that crash with the Hawk gave the Olympic a permanent slight tilt to one side. A list, they call it. And this is where eyewitnesses come in. Multiple survivors, like Lawrence Beasley, actually reported that the ship they were on, the one called Titanic, had this weird, noticeable lean to the port side for the entire trip. It wasn't from the iceberg. It was apparently there from the moment they left. This might be one of the most compelling visual clues people point to. So the two ships had a very clear, very specific structural difference, the number of portholes on one particular deck. The Olympic had 16, the Titanic had 14. Simple as that. The thing is, there are photos of the ship leaving Southampton, the ship with Titanic written right on the side. And in those photos, it appears to have the 16 porthole layout of the Olympic. Is that just a simple mistake in the records? Or is that the smoking gun? And it doesn't stop there. What about the name itself? For some reason, the Titanic had its name riveted on big metal plates instead of being stamped right into the steel of the hull like its sister ship. Strange, right? Maybe it was to make a quick change easier? Some researchers who have pored over photos of the wreck claim that on the bow, where the Titanic nameplate has fallen away over the years, you can just make out the faint impression of the letters M and P from the name Olympic stamped underneath. So if you're following this and you're thinking, okay, maybe they did switch the ships, then you have to completely rethink the sinking itself. Because the theory goes way beyond just the swap. It suggests that the disaster wasn't an accident at all. It was a planned event that just went horribly, horribly wrong. The theorist Robin Gardner proposes something that is truly shocking. He argues that a massive, steel, double-hulled ship like this just wouldn't be torn apart so catastrophically by a chunk of ice. No, he suggests the ship didn't hit an iceberg at all. He thinks it actually collided with a dark, silent rescue vessel that was supposed to be there waiting, but was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that brings us to the mysterious SS Californian, another ship owned by the very same company, stopped dead in the water in that same ice field, so tantalizingly close to the disaster. So why was it just sitting there? Why did it have 0 passengers, but a very strange cargo of thousands of blankets and sweaters? The theory says the Californian was the designated rescue ship. It was supposed to meet the sinking Titanic, take all the passengers aboard, and turn the whole thing into a story of a heroic but ultimately safe evacuation. The catastrophic loss of life, well, that was never supposed to happen. It was a tragic, fatal miscalculation in the plan. So you have a clear motive, you have a trail of really suspicious clues, and you have a completely different story of what happened on that fateful night. I mean, it is easy to see why this theory has gripped people's imaginations for decades, but the big question is, does this incredibly compelling story actually hold up when you look at the hard science and forensic evidence? As fascinating as the conspiracy is, you've got maritime historians who have spent years, meticulously picking it apart. And they argue that all that evidence is just a mix of coincidence, misunderstanding, and in some cases, things that are just flat out wrong. So let's look at the case against the big switch. The case against this whole theory really comes down to cold, hard physical proof. First, while the ships looked identical, there were actually hundreds of small structural differences that would have made a swap in that short amount of time a logistical nightmare. And those MP letters on the hull? Modern super clear footage of the wreck shows nothing, not a trace. But here is the real smoking gun. Pieces of the ship recovered from the debris field on the ocean floor are stamped with the construction number 401, and that number belonged without any doubt to the RMS Titanic. The Olympic's number was 400. And the other clues? Well, historians say the insurance money just wasn't enough to be worth the risk. That list to port was probably just from unevenly loaded coal. And JP Morgan, well, he was famous for canceling his plan. And so that's where we are. We're left with 2 completely different stories. On one side, a tragic, straightforward accident at sea, a story about human pride clashing with the power of nature, all surrounded by thick fog of really weird coincidences. And on the other side, one of the most elaborate, cold-blooded insurance scams in all of human history. A conspiracy that spun out of control and became a horrific tragedy. And while the physical evidence we have now points pretty firmly to an accident, those questions, those coincidences, they are what keep this theory alive and breathing. So what do you think? After hearing all of this, what does your gut tell you? Was it a terrible accident or the perfect crime gone wrong? Drop your theory in the comments below. I'd seriously love to read what you think. And hey, if you enjoy diving deep into mysteries like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We've got so many more stories like this to unravel. Thanks for watching.